Well, Walt was one of the greatest players ever to play here, for sure. And he was in a unique time in Maryland basketball. Things were not good, and Walt had the opportunity to go anywhere in the country and play, and he could have gone anywhere in the country and played because he was that good.
Too good!
He chose to stay here, and it's something I've never forgotten and understand how important Walt was to the history of Maryland basketball.
When people talk about the most important players in Maryland history, and Gary Williams has said this, you mentioned people like Bias and John Lucas, McMillan, and Juan Dixon, who led the team to a national championship. But in terms of modern Maryland basketball, the most important player could be Walt Williams.
That's my man, Walt Williams.
Walt the Wizard Williams.
A prince of a guy.
He is going to be a very, very strong player in the ACC before he graduates from Maryland. Williams for three!
From Temple Hills, Maryland, 6'8" sophomore, number 42, Walt Williams.
But Walt Williams, the star of the day and of the year in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Here's Walt Williams. Amazing. No wonder they call him the Wizard.
These courts will be packed with people, and so if you lost, you might as well take a bike ride to another court because you had hours before the next game. So the sense of urgency on every single play was real out here because you just did not want to lose, and you certainly didn't want to be the reason that your team lost. So you know, you played hard every second, every play. It was a dogfight out here.
It's a shame more kids today don't grow up on playgrounds. Part of being a player is learning how to win.
Walt Williams has 32 points and 11 rebounds.
That was really a key to his game where he saw the whole court. Even though he grew and he got to be 6'8", and he had all these physical skills, ingrained in Walt was, okay, I'm going to do this to try to win the game.
Now they run Williams off a screen. Oh, clean touch.
Gotta get him involved.
Leans in, basket no good. That was great defense by Lewis that time. Great pass, great dunk. Lewis to Williams to Martin.
He was a little bit ahead of his time.
He played 4 positions. He didn't play the center position. Back then, you actually had a center.
He could play the point, he could play the 2, he could play the 3, he could play the small ball 4.
And you started to see that was the type of player that started to come from this area, that 6'6", 6'5", and up guy who could do everything, shoot the ball, off the dribble, spot up, create his own shot. So just scoring at all 3 levels and just being a real versatile player. Boy, you could not just be good in one thing. If you could shoot the ball, believe that whoever was guarding you, they were going to be in your face to make sure that you wasn't going to get a shot off. And so now when I go from high school to college, that transition from being a center in high school organized basketball to being a point guard at the college level, it was a seamless transition for me because the environment I was used to playing in.
14,500 on hand at Cole Fieldhouse in College Park, Maryland. Gerard Fastaff, true freshman, starts at 1 forward spot, along with Walt Williams, a 6'8" freshman. And the junior in the front line, Tony Massenberg, the only returning starter from a year ago.
It's 1988, and we are struggling as a program. Coach Bob Wade is our head coach. We recently had some transfers after having a great season in 1987, 1988, the year before. We actually made the tournament, second round of the tournament, less than 2 years after the death of Len Bias. So a lot of people don't know about that team that we had under Bob Wade that featured Brian Williams, a.k.a. Bison Dele.
And he was a terrific college player. I think he was ACC Rookie of the Year, and they made the NCAA tournament that year.
All right, that's Kentucky and Maryland coming your way from Cincinnati. We will take you there. Vern Lundquist and Tommy Heinsohn will have the call for CBS as we continue right after this.
Brian Williams, strong move off the glass.
They lost to Kentucky in the second round. But things were going well until Brian Williams left.
This team had 7 high school All-Americans on, okay? This 87-88 team that Bob Wade had assembled. I was not one of those guys from high school, but I was in that starting line.
Another big factor for Maryland will be this guy right here, number 25, Tony Massenberg. After missing all last season for Maryland and the first 7 games of this year, he's come back very strong, and I think he may be the player who is just enough to put Maryland over the top and into the first division of the ACC.
Unfortunately, we couldn't keep it together, and we had a number of guys transfer in 1988.
Bob Wade had a very successful 1988 season. They got into the NCAAs and lost to Kentucky, but then some controversy went, particularly, Tommy, when Brian Williams elected to transfer. He was one of 3 who elected to go somewhere else.
Well, he's the first real great player that was recruited by Bob Wade, and he ended up transferring to Arizona, and there's been all kind of charges, semi-charges, under the, in back rooms saying that he was tampered with and what have you, but nevertheless, he has left, and that had all kind of repercussions for Bob Wade.
So some guys leave out, and the incoming class features Gerard Mustaf, who was a top-tier high school basketball player since he was a sophomore and was the #1 recruit for that class for the University of Maryland.
From Greenbelt, Maryland, 6'10" sophomore forward, for 32, Gerard Mustaf.
And there was another guy named Walt Williams. And I talked to Coach Wade, I say, we know about Mustaf, but who's this other guy, Walt Williams? And he says, oh, you're gonna like Walt. He's a real nice player. You're gonna like it.
Feeds the lane, Williams. Nice move, Walt Williams. That's 2 more. Williams cans it, a leaner.
Back in 1987, I was a student team manager when Walt Williams was a player and when we recruited him here to the university.
It's random, actually, because sometimes it's, it could have been me that had taken Walt out. I think I took Gerard out on his visit, but I didn't take Walt out. If you want some good Walt Williams stories, talk to Troy Rainwright.
I was one of the hosts on Walt's recruiting trip. I remind him quite a bit, and I think he chuckles at that. It must have been a holiday or something. Guys went out of town. They didn't have a lot to choose from, but myself and Matt Rowe, we were his recruiting hosts. Walt, being Walt at the time, he stood on the wall most of the night. Around 10 o'clock, he said he was ready to go home, and I just thought, man, this is awful. This just did not go well. And so Matt Rowe and I took him back to the hotel. On the way back, we were like, he's not coming here. And we kind of felt like we'd really kind of failed in what we were trying to do with Walt. The next morning, I remember I went into the basketball office. I was kind of trying to run in so Coach Bob Wade wouldn't see me, but he saw me and he said, so how'd it go with Walt last night? And I just, with my tail between my legs, I said, Coach, it just didn't go well. I said, quite honestly, I don't think he's coming. And he said, well, I don't know if you've got a future in this business as a recruiter because you can't read kids very well. He just left my office 15 minutes ago and he committed.
He had always wanted to come to Maryland. Len Bias was his idol, and Walt would come to the games as a young kid and watch Lenny play at the University of Maryland.
My dad was a North Carolina Tar Heel fan, so he took me to a Tar Heel Terp game.
All right, let's do it. The Tar Heels and the Terrapins are set to tear it up here in College Park.
And I saw Len Bias. He took a dribble to the baseline and rose up and shot a jumper, and that was just the prettiest thing that I have ever saw.
Product gives it back out front to Bias baseline, turnaround off the baseline. Oh, Bias is cooking.
All of a sudden, I just became a Terp fan, and then realizing that he was from this area, that made me love him even more. As a matter of fact, when we used to come out here and play on these blacktops, before the game would start, a number of us would yell out who we were going to pretend to be that day. And most oftentimes, I would get a chance to be Len Bias. I would get a chance to pretend to be him that day. And when it got to the moment when it was up to me to make a decision where I was going, that meant something to me. And so I wanted the kids in this neighborhood, in my community, I wanted them to come out here and play the game and pretend like they were me, like I did Len Bias. And so he was a big, big reason why I chose the University of Maryland. And of course, that lady over there, I could not leave my mom. So I wanted to play near her. I wanted her to be able to come to the games and see me play.
We'll have the starting lineups and the tip-off, a sellout crowd at Cole Fieldhouse, the University of Maryland, back right after this.
There's little doubt that Maryland has toughened up their academic requirements, while at the same time, they are moving up on the court. Whether this difficult balancing act can be sustained is Bob Wade's biggest challenge. Bill O'Reilly, ABC News, College Park, Maryland.
And hello again, everybody. I'm Tim Brent. The focal point tonight is on Maryland head coach Bob Wade. Meanwhile, Maryland head coach Bob Wade is in the eye of the hurricane. Although he's gotten a vote of confidence from the Board of Regents, his young Terps are 7-13 and still looking for their first conference win of the year.
Some people in the press have said that he's no longer going to be the coach here.
The head coach of the Maryland Terrapins is Bob Wade.
Bob Wade is one of the few coaches who ever got fired and won his last game as a number 8 seed, beating NC State.
One of the great upsets in the history of this conference tournament. First time a 8-seeded team has ever won a game in the tournament.
And that was a chaotic scene because he had high blood pressure. They ended up taking him to the hospital. They thought he had a heart attack.
Bob Wade is soaked right through his shirt. His game may be slow in tempo, but not in his heartbeat.
6'1" junior from Baltimore, Rudy Archer.
They had a point guard from Baltimore, Rudy Archer, who had some academic issues, so he was no longer part of the program. And then they tried to bring him back, and that's when Bob Wade got in trouble for driving him to PG Community College. I think Bob was trying to help the kid, but he was also breaking NCAA rules at the same time.
No disrespect to Coach Wade, but he inherited a really tough situation, and the circumstances surrounding that are what really did him in.
Well, I know that certainly that Maryland is being investigated, but I don't know anything. That's strictly the NCAA's private matter right now, so we'll all find out in the near future, and we'll go on from there.
Walt was there my first 3 years, and the first year we were good. We should have been in the NCAA tournament, but I don't think the NCAA wanted us in the tournament. We had beaten Carolina twice that year. We won at Southern Cal. We had the wins. We had 19 wins. They just didn't want us around because they came out with the sanctions the week of the ACC tournament that year. And the next couple of years, we couldn't play on live TV or be in the NCAA tournament.
We were one of the only teams, I think, that wasn't allowed to be on TV. I've never seen that happen. And when those things are levied against you, it's very difficult to recruit, obviously. It's very difficult to even be competitive because guys want to be seen on TV. Guys want to go where they're noticed.
Well, the first things I'll do will be to meet the players and really try to get to know them. I think the players that are in the program right now committed to go to the University of Maryland, and certainly my job is to make their stay here the best possible stay in terms of their academic work and their playing career. So
I remember the day he came in my office and I said, here we go. I felt like asking, okay, where are you going to go? Let's cut right to the chase.
He had options at Georgetown, at Carolina. Everybody saw how good he had gotten.
There's a lot of job opportunities out there, a lot of places that Walt could have gone to play college basketball. But as he made a commitment to his mom and dad, and he made a commitment to the University of Maryland, this is where I've always wanted to go to school, this is where I've always wanted to play. If I bag it on these guys, if I jump the ship, what does that say about me? What's it say about the promises I made and the commitment I made to my family and to the University of Maryland?
I know family. I know sticking beside each other and hanging in there with each other through tough times. So, when I look back on it in retrospect and people talk about, oh man, that was what did you make that decision for? Because I could have transferred and played right away. I wouldn't have had to sit out a year. But I couldn't fathom leaving my family, my immediate family and my extended Terp family. I couldn't imagine doing that. So it was an easy process for me. It was an easy decision for me. I thought that I could fulfill my dreams right here.
One thing I like about Williams, the loyalty factor. He could have ran to another program, been eligible immediately according to the NCAA sanctions, yet he stood here. He stood at the school that gave him a chance, even though they weren't going to play on TV or a tournament. That tells me a lot about the character of the guy.
So I said, what is this kid going to do now? When the basketball starts to go up and down the court, and when that ball touches his hand, that's when the magic happens.
Lob inside, great play to Walt Williams.
Williams again.
Really has been the
story offensively for Maryland.
Three-pointer by Williams. Holy cow.
And he had that infectious smile and that tremendous personality that made him almost like a rock star.
Walt Williams is coming alive, coming out tonight.
Give it back to Williams. In the middle. Whoa! Yes! Hello! Hello! That's awesome, baby! A little reverse jam. Give it go. The Wizard!
You were seeing something special. My kids, who are now grown men, were young, and I used to say, I'm off to see the Wizard.
The Wizard!
Well, I had a roommate, Jesse Martin.
I'll give credit where credit's due. Jesse Martin, who played back in those days with us, just started calling Walt the Wizard.
Between him and Coach Wade, I'm not quite sure who did it, but somebody called Walt the Wizard.
And so Jesse Martin used to always call me Wizzy Walt. We out there, we're playing pickup games. We used to play every day. And every now and again, I would hear Coach Wade going, oh man. One time I was in his office and he was talking about the pickup game that he had saw, and I was making, tricky passes and things like that out on the court. And so he was like, man, we got to think of a nickname for you. And that in practices, he started calling me the Wizard because he thought that Jesse Martin was calling me the Wizard instead of Wizzy Walt.
And when we heard it, we knew from the first time it would stick.
And Walter the Wizard Williams, one of the hottest players in America.
You better go out and pick him up. You'll have a pull-up. How about that move?
Oh, boy, that was nice.
You know what's interesting? At our left, there are about 7 NBA scouts. And on that move, they all just backed up and laughed.
Yeah, I remember this. Now, this right here, when you can actually put on this costume right here and smile, that's when you know you done made it.
When were these taken?
Yeah, you can tell he enjoys that. There's no question. I'd give anything to know where that outfit is today.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, the wand out and I had that was so embarrassing, man. So we taking pictures all around campus, in the Colford house out in front, and they got me, this thing was, it was full length, and it was heavy. I'm sitting out there posing with the magician robe on and a wand and a hat, and people are walking past.
I wonder if you could do that today. I'm not, people are crazy today. So.
I remember coming into the gym when they were doing that, because that was in Cole Fieldhouse, and quite a few people just were sitting there and all kind of chuckling at it. But that smile in this one picture here, that tells it all.
Ultimately, I'm glad I did that, but at the time, it was torture.
I tease him about that picture because it's funny, but at the end of the day, the things that he did, he deserved all the praise that he got. He lived up to the nickname. He certainly performed miracles in certain situations. I saw that myself with some of the numbers that he put up.
And from Temple Hills, Maryland, 6'8", sophomore guard, number 42, Walt Williams.
My sophomore year, we were playing against North Carolina.
And a sellout crowd getting ready to watch the Maryland Terrapins against the Tar Heels of North Carolina.
And I was really, really sick. Had the flu this particular day. And all through the day, I didn't think I was going to play in the game, but I just said, when it got close to game time, I said, you know what, let me walk over to the gym and just see how I feel when I get inside the gym. So on the way walking over to the gym, the turtle was in the middle of the yard. So whenever I would walk across the yard, I would always rub the turtle for good luck, This particular time, I rubbed the turtle and a bird pooped on my head right at the same time. Somebody told me later on that was good luck, but I didn't know it at the time. I was just so upset that I had all this bird poop on my head.
I can remember the North Carolina game where he really showed Carolina that he had arrived.
That was probably one of the best games I ever played in my life.
Williams now being guarded by Davis and drives on him. Hello by Williams. Back to Williams. Williams pulls up for the three. He is hot tonight. Outside, inside, and dishing it off. Oh, what a jam by Williams. Holy cow, what a half.
points, another new career high every time he puts one up.
And it was so great to be able to do it against my dad's favorite team, North Carolina. So that was a little added extra value for that game.
Walt Williams ought to be the guy that has it at the end of the game. And he just tosses it up in the air. It's over. The University of Maryland has beaten North Carolina at College Park for the first time since 1983. Walt Williams, 33 points, and Clark Kellogg just an absolutely sensational ball game.
I knew at that point that Walt Williams was going to be a guy that was going to make his mark at the University of Maryland.
And there was a stretch of games in his senior year. He had 7 consecutive games of 30 points or more.
Nobody did that. That was just incredible.
I did score a lot of points, man.
This is the game. Walt had 33 points.
And my analyst, Greg Manning, and I would sit there and almost disbelieve, saying, okay, the first time he played against Florida State, he had 31 points. What's he going to have tonight? Well, there's no way he's going to have 31 again. So he ends up with 33 points in the second time he faces Florida State.
I think if you even ask Walt, he can probably name the teams that he gave 30 to. A couple of them, I think, got it twice.
Florida State was there twice. I think Clemson got some of that 30 piece as well. Man, I couldn't tell you all the Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest got some of that sandwich too, man.
Little lob play we run for Walt. Once again, a good pass from Vince.
Gary, I said 33. He had 31 in this ball game.
Well, you know, you get over 30, John, you lose track.
Yeah, lose track on it.
And a three-pointer there by Walt off the screen. And right there, Walt made a tough three-pointer because the guy was right on him.
14-5, I think that's where the Cofield House at. These people that's in the gym today, oh, I'm going to put on a show for them today. I'm going to show them I'm the best. Whoever was watching that night, I was going to show them I was the baddest dude on this court.
When Walt get the ball in transition or whatever, the crowd would start to make noise before he even did anything because they knew something wild was going to happen.
Walt was that player when he was on the court that you just watched. You wanted to see what Walt was going to do next.
There just were not guys that were 6'8" who could score 30 a game from the perimeter, shoot threes, drop dimes.
You know, when you talk about players at Maryland that had the impact that Walt did, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find too many who had.
Where this program would be without Walt having stayed is anybody's guess. Certainly not as good as it is today because of Walt Williams.
What fueled me is that there was so many people that were in my corner, and it wasn't just because of my success, it was because they loved me. And it made me feel like whether I succeeded or whether I failed, I still was going to have that love there, so I might as well give 100%.
Walt Williams is exhausted. That's his mother, Teresa. Very proud of her son, who is soon to become a very wealthy son.
He will be, and that's the toughest part. The parent watching the youngster perform, wishing and praying that everything is a success, and her prayers have been recognized, wouldn't you say?
But to see what Walt has done and to see how people gravitate to Walt. When he walks into Xfinity, it's amazing. Like he struggles to get over to the press table where they do the radio because everybody wants to talk to Walt. Walt always has time for people. Walt never big times anybody. What he's done with his, with his life. You look at his family, you look at his career, giving back a scholarship to the university in honor of his late father.
Over $100,000 scholarship he put together because he loved this university. That's Walt Williams.
He's one of my all-time favorite teammates. He's one of the realest guys, and most of all, I call him a friend because of the type of man that he is. He's the type of guy where when Walt says he's got your back, he's got your back.
All right, we good? Are we good? All right, cool.